Good afternoon. This is Tony Abatini, episode number 2 for Beyond the Ball. We are in Chester, New York. You can see the campus in the background. We have a special guest that'll be joining us probably in a few minutes. Wanted to make some preliminary foundational chats about what we're trying to accomplish in the podcast. Beyond the Ball, which is also the name of my book, called it that really just so that we're not simply talking all the time about the X and O's of the games. And we're going to try to go past baseball and softball. In the beginning, we'll probably have more baseball, softball guests that are on. But the purpose and the objective is to be able to provide some real good information to parents, players, and coaches who are playing amateur sports and introducing them to some of the topics that are going on at the professional level. So think of it as that you're a travel coach, you're a high school coach, you're a college coach, and in the ever-ending journey for new information, what can I learn from Beyond the Ball, where there's a combination of mental skills, holistic approach to strength and conditioning, and yes, we'll talk about the swing and the pitching delivery and the way in which kickers on soccer fields can execute. But the main thrust was to provide, I call it the invisible part of the game, things that we don't really talk too much about in the coaching world. And so with that, and I know chatting sometimes about, I'm just going to make sure, I'm looking at my phone to make sure our friend Nate Headley is going to be calling in, but getting topics that I think will encourage parents and players to, oh, that's different, that's interesting. That's going a little bit beyond the ball, hence the name of the show. Sports parenting is a hot topic right now. Mental health and mental wellness is certainly a big topic. How do we as a coach and as a parent reduce anxiety and build self-confidence at the same time we're trying to develop skill development? I think those are the topics that, people find interesting. In polling the audience the last few weeks, let's talk about things that really matter. How to build more athleticism, in athletes. Is it okay to simply have one sport or two sports? We just finished Major League Baseball Scout Day last Saturday, and we had the Major League Scouts talking about we want players that can play other sports and really defining what athleticism is all about. Is it running fast? Is it throwing the ball? Is it lifting weights? I think those are the topics that over the course of the next few episodes that we're going to be handling. And we'll go with guests many times just because of all the staff and personalities that we have on campus here in Frozen Ropes in Chester, New York. We'll bring some of my staff in for them to give their perspective on X, Y, and Z. We're going to encourage you to provide or ask for some topics. If you go to frozenropes.com, in the general inquiry box, you can put in and ask for, hey, this is a topic, Tony, that I find very interesting. Can you talk about that and what guest speakers you'd like to hear join me at times? So we'd like to get your input as a parent, as a coach. The topics, as I said before, we will dabble in the mechanical part of sports. We think that's important. But there's so much information at this point out on the internet, out on social media, that I wanted Beyond the Ball to be more of the invisible part of the game. So I think we have a call coming in right now. Let me just see if it is the famous, is this Nate Headley?
This is Nate Headley.
Nate, this is Tony Abatini from Beyond the Ball. We are in Chester, New York. It is about 50 degrees in beautiful New York. I want to welcome you to the show. And before we get started and talk about your resume, I mean, your resume, I can be here for days upon end. Most importantly, how are my other friends down at 108 Performance doing?
Well, Tony, first of all, thanks for having me on. We're doing great. We actually, it's like 75 degrees down here, so it's not great deer hunting weather for me, so I'm a little frustrated on that. But we're down here grinding, man. We got a few pro ball guys in. Just got finished up working with them and getting ready. We're going to fly out to Houston next week. We're going to go train down at Houston Christian, where Lance Berkman's the head coach. So Never know, man. It's never a dull moment down here at 108. So we get shipped off wherever, whenever.
Well, that's awesome. And Nate, let me just give the audience a little background as the co-owner of 108 TriStar, the director of hitting at 108 Performance. Nate is one of those guys you talk about, played at the highest level, Division I, coached at the University of Tennessee, has been in what I call the real world private sector player development for over 20 years. He's an author now. He's a co-author of a book that we're going to talk about, Who's on First, Everything Baseball Players and Their Parents Need to Know. I have to say this, Nate, I don't know if you follow Star Wars at all, but when I first met you, I got flashbacks of Obi-Wan Kenobi. That is your... That is your nickname in New York. My son Anthony, who met you on the way back, we said, Dad, he looks like a Star Wars character. And I said, Aunt, that's not very nice, calling Nate Chewbacca or R2-D2. He goes, no, the cool guy, the Obi-Wan Kenobi. So people that don't know what Obi-Wan Kenobi looks like, you need to go look at that. And Nate is that profile. I think Nate's a little bit better looking than Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I wanted to share that with you before we started talking about the book, Nate.
Well, I've been called a lot worse, I'm sure. So I'll certainly take
good,
that one, brother.
Well, so let's get right into and let's talk about the book. As I mentioned before, I read it. And I read a lot of books. I think it not only was interesting, but there's not too many books that are out there that really encompasses so many different topics that are so relevant to the typical baseball player and their parents. So kudos to you and Bobby with help from Ted and Herman. But share with us the reason. What was the why behind the book?
Sure. So it's probably been 4 or 5 years ago. Bobby Bramhall, my co-author, approached me about the project, and it was something I was always interested in doing and intrigued about the opportunity. But it was just I was doing 80 to 100 private lessons a day, or 80 to 100 private lessons a week, and I just finding time to sit down and write a book was dang near impossible. And then obviously when COVID hit, everyone was pretty much shut down, and Bobby actually gave up his job at Texas A&M to move back up here and write the book with me. So, a huge step for him. And for the first time in my entire career, I didn't have anything to do. So, besides hunting and fishing, I decided might as well be productive during the shutdown, and we were able to sit down and we would write typically 4 to 5 hours a day out at his barn out in Strawberry Plains, out here in the Knoxville area. And then if we weren't able to get together, we would just write on FaceTime or grind through chapter after chapter. And it's been one of those things that it's something that's been on my heart for a while to do. And the fact that when I get done with lessons at the end of the day, I'm walking out in the parking lot and I've got a parent cornering me by my car when I'm trying to get home to see my family at 10 p.m. at night. And, the conversations that go on for 45 minutes to an hour after we're getting out of the tunnel and answering questions about, where my kid should play travel ball, what level should he be playing at, how do we deal with the recruiting process, what should we do on the strength and conditioning side. Just one of those things that, it gave me an opportunity to take all those conversations that I've had over the last 20 plus years and put it in paper and put it into an affordable form that, we could get out to the masses and, hopefully help out with a lot of the things that my parents had questions about with myself and my brother who played in the big leagues for 10 years. So it's one of those things that even people that go through that process as far as being recruited by a number of Power 5 Division I schools and having the opportunity to play professional baseball after he played at University of Tennessee, it's still a process, man. And we wanted to do something more than just the youth baseball side of it, but also, how to select an agent. My brother specifically went through multiple agents, and, I was a part of that process with him and trying to figure out, that route. And then obviously on the back end of his career, dealing with retirement and being released and almost losing your identity. And they talk about it all the time as far as athletes have 2 deaths. They have their physical death as far as when we pass along, and then the death as far as they lose their identity as a baseball player. And it was a unique situation with Chase, and the fact that when he got designated for assignment from the Padres, he actually wanted out of there because he wasn't playing every day, and as a switch hitter, not being in the lineup every day, it keeps it tough to manage 2 swings. So Once he got released there, he stayed in shape, kept grinding, had a couple offers from two teams that were at the bottom end of the pack, and he wasn't really interested in going playing for a team that he wasn't going to have a chance to win at. He had just come off a run of the ALCS when they lost in Game 7 to the Astros. So it was one of those things for him that he didn't really have an opportunity to have any closure to his career. So that was one of the things that we talked about with him a little bit, and how athletes deal with that. So our goal was to help kids that are just getting into the game from the age of 5 years old and picking up a bat for the first time and playing t-ball, and then all the way throughout the course of their career. It's not necessarily a book that you're meant to sit down and read cover to cover. It's more along the lines of, it depends on where you're at in your career, and basically anyone who's playing this game, whether it's baseball or softball for that matter, there's information in it for everyone at every level, and that's the biggest thing. It's not necessarily about just going out there and giving people a map to getting to the big leagues, but it's also a career. It's also helping out with the kids that just want to be a really good high school baseball player. There's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody's going to play collegiate baseball, but giving kids the opportunity to enjoy this game at whatever level it is, and whatever level they honestly want to play at. That's one of the things with my brother and I. I mean, my brother got to play in the big leagues. I played at a JUCO level, and had some opportunities to play after that, but without getting too deep into some of the stories that I dealt with at the JUCO I was at, everybody has a different path, and there's not necessarily one correct way to go about it.
Well, Nate, it's interesting, and kudos for the reality that most players that visit you in Knoxville, Tennessee, and visit our locations around the country are not only not going to play in the major leagues, but there's a pretty good chance that they're not even going to play at the Division I level. And I think as much as we want every player, and I'm sure it's the same thing with you guys down there, you want everybody to dream big. There's no question that when you're a little boy, you want to play up here for the New York Yankees or the Atlanta Braves or whatnot. But at some point, reality has to set in. I think the book really addresses that. When you look at the different chapters, how to identify quality instruction, navigating the travel baseball circuit, camps and showcases, high school baseball recruiting in the NLI, junior college baseball, four-year college baseball. That to me is probably 97% of the young men who play baseball, because the percentages are in major single digits if they're going to play Division I or have an opportunity to play where your brother did. So this, to me, this was why this book resonated to me. Parents these days are overwhelmed with information. They're overwhelmed with recruiting services that are charging a ton of money for shotgunning resumes across the country. We'll talk about private baseball instruction and some of the advice that you can give to parents that are inundated with everyone from who's on Twitter to the well-intending young man who played 1 year in pro ball and his opinion is going to be the gospel. But I think, to your point, this is not a book that you probably sit down and read in one shot. You'll pick and choose which ones make the most sense. But clearly, and I can say it without it being self-serving from you, it hits every major component that a student athlete and a parent needs to understand. I think that's where kudos to you and Bobby for putting it together. How's the reaction been so far? I know it's early on in the process between Amazon, and we'll talk a little more about how people can purchase the books. What's been the feedback so far, particularly with the parents?
So far, it's been awesome. We did a soft launch a few months ago, and then we actually just finalized the deal with Perfect Game for them to market and carry it and sell it on their e-platform, and hopefully we're going to be in their shops locations on at the tournaments as well. So it's been great, and everyone has read the book. We've had great reviews on it. Like I said, there's two totally opposite ends of the spectrum as far as like where parents are at, and you have the unrealistic parent that thinks their kid's going to play for the Yankees, and who knows, when a kid's 10 years old, you don't know if they are or they aren't. But then you also have the parents that are like, well, I know my kid's pretty good, but I want him to make sure that he's focusing primarily just on school. But I tell them all the time, like, someone's got to do it, right? Someone's got to play in the big leagues. And I fortunately had the opportunity to watch my brother do it for 10 years. So it's trying to find, the reality of each situation from each athlete. And that's going to differ. It's going to differ, the surroundings they have as far as the opportunities and resources that they have put into them and the people around them that are, building, like they say, it takes a village, and it's truly, that's truly the case. And surrounding yourselves with the right people can be difficult at times. If you're in the middle of nowhere and there's no private instruction, and you're searching for player development, and there's no one around you, or financially that the parents can't afford it, we just try to find a way to make sure that we open up doors for people, no matter what the situation is, and what they're battling or what they're going through on their end, trying to find the best way for parents to maximize the opportunities, without minimizing, or without, them having to go out and spend all the money they own or all the money they have to send them to camps and showcases and tournaments all over the country. I think a perfect example, Evan Carter, who's, the rookie sensation with the Texas Rangers. I've had him since the COVID draft. He was the 50th overall pick in the COVID draft, and basically the Rangers got completely annihilated for drafting the kid. And he was a kid that really didn't play travel ball a whole lot. He picked up and played with one of our RBI Tri-Cities, my previous facility. We have a subsidiary in the Johnson City area, and he picked up and went down and played with them in Fort Myers in one of the biggest tournaments in the country. And he went down there and went off, had one great tournament, kind of got on the map for a few teams. The Texas Rangers brought him in for a pre-draft workout, and he's a 6'4" left-handed hitting guy, a center fielder that runs a 6'2". So that was a 6'2" laser time. And, obviously it's pretty impressive for, an athlete of that type to run that kind of 60. And then obviously he was 92, 94 off the bump as a right-handed pitcher. Hit tools were far beyond a lot of the kids he was playing with. But again, he wasn't a guy that played in many perfect game tournaments or had gone to any perfect game showcases. And it just goes to show, if you do the things the right way and you continue to develop and work hard, and it takes one opportunity. That's truly all it takes. I got back from coaching down in Jupiter this year, and we had two kids on my 17U home plate team that I coached that, they put themselves on the map and probably got themselves paid in the draft this year. And, it's a different situation now too with NIL. We've got one of those kids is going to the University of Tennessee and one of them is going to Georgia Tech, and both of them now are going to probably they're going to have a decision to make, as far as, if they're going to go on and play collegiately, or they're going to go ahead and start their professional career. But it's a cool place now with NIL going on. There's a way to match the money that, the professional organizations are offering these kids, and it's kind of open up other opportunities for these kids to almost enjoy a different pathway to professional baseball than a lot of guys had to do, as far as making the decision of, do I want to go to school or do I want to go play professional baseball right away?
Nate, one of the, before I even forget, someone who wants to pick up the book, where can they find the book? Where can they purchase it today?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, probably the easiest way to do is just hop on Amazon. We have paperback, hardcover. We have an Audible version, and we have an ebook. So we have every resource possible as far as how you like to consume your information. So easiest way right now is hop on Amazon, and like I said, you can, any form of book you like to read, that's we've got it available.
Who's on first? Everything baseball players and their parents need to know. Bobby Bramhill and Nate Headley. We've got Nate, Obi-Wan Kenobi, on the line with us. Nate, we're going to just transition a little bit into instruction and getting kids better and whatnot. And I love the fact that you made reference. I mean, the Evan Carter story is great. Even though he was a first-round pick, he got there a little different than some of the other, I call them the show ponies, that are on the circuit doing their thing. And if you have talent, they will find you, unlike football or basketball. And I think you would agree with this. You don't necessarily have to play in the Big Ten or the SEC in order to get noticed, with the amount of scouts that are out there, both at the high school, junior college, and the Division II, III level. If you're good and if you continue to get better, they will find you. There's always more success stories. Unfortunately, the draft right now is somewhat less than it was 10, 15 years ago. It makes it tougher to do, but the independence and playing ball that way sometimes is a better form than getting stuck in the minor leagues. But I want to put the attention on to the parents and information overload. How does a parent know if the instruction is good. And the problem that I think, and you see it down there, we see it in New York, I see it around the country, parents don't know. And I think many times, as long as you are a little bit more competent and can sell a little bit better than mom or dad, they think that your instruction is the next level. And unfortunately, in this business, there's no regulation. The only qualification to be a professional baseball instructor in private sector is your charge, which is ludicrous. So anybody can take money, and some do it with the best of intentions. And I'm not here to say that people are intentionally, teaching shit. Excuse me. Okay, you teach what you know, but as a parent, right? And unfortunately, the window of development is X. You don't get to rewind the 12, 13, 14 years, which in my opinion are extremely formative in developing skills. What advice, other than going to 108 Performance and Frozen Ropes locations, because we're the best of the best, and I say that tongue in cheek, but I also know, from a credibility standpoint, how can a parent sift through the information for them to say, this is the stuff, these are the moves, this is the instruction, this is the training equipment, these are the people my son or daughter should be around? How can you help in that decision with these parents?
For sure, man. And that's kind of one of the things, that's one of the questions we answer on a weekly basis, as far as people reaching out to us through social media and asking, like, hey, do you know anybody in the area that's quality instructor? And obviously, perfect case scenario for us, we have someone in that area that we trust, that have worked with us, that uses our stuff, or ideally get them to fly in and train with us. But that's obviously not realistic for a lot of people, and can't happen for everyone. So the biggest thing I'm going to tell you, as far as making sure you're sending your son or daughter to someone that's going to give them proper quality player development, is simply, if they're training the same exact way with every single athlete, if they're telling them the exact same things as they're telling the athlete that's in, right in before them or right after them, that's typically a red flag. Everybody, there's 14,000 different motor preferences as far as how we're born the way we move, and that's the way God designed us to move. So, if you're trying to tell an aerial to move like a terrestrial, or vice versa, or a supinator to move like a pronator, those things are actually going to take athletes the wrong way. And it's difficult, and this is by no means a knock from, young instructors out there that are doing their best and truly have the right intentions of helping young athletes. But you have to understand, like, we've all been there at some point in time too, right? Like, I started in this industry over 20 years ago, and there's certain things that I look back on and wish that, I would have done differently. And certain things that I look back on, as far as, hey, I'll look at an athlete, I'm like, man, if I would have thought about this cue or this drill for this kid. And ultimately, you want to find someone that, number one, connects with your athlete. If they can communicate with your athlete enjoys being in there with them, your athlete trusts them, then you're going to typically get more results at a faster rate from them. But the biggest thing is making sure that you're not getting cookie cutter instruction that specifically, hey, I'm gonna tell every single kid the same exact thing. And that's the biggest red flag that I run into, that you see on social media. And anybody on social media that tells you that there's only one way, and without naming any names out there, there's plenty of instructors that this is the only way, this is the way the greatest hitters in the world do it. And that's just false. And you don't need to be a hitting guru to understand that. If you go back and look at, take 400 big leaguers over the last 150 years and you compare their swings, they're going to see some similarities for sure in some of the greatest hitters, but you're going to see completely different movers. So it makes no sense for one guy to be out there and saying, hey, this is the only way to hit, and this is the only, this is the best way to do it, because that's just not the case. We deal with, we have kids, hundreds of kids that come in our facility every week. And, I tell people this all the time. At least once a day, I say something to a kid that I feel like I need to wash my mouth out with soap, because I can't believe I just said that to him. I can't believe I just told them that cue to use, because it's so anti what I would ever think or what most athletes would think, but it freaking works. And that's all that matters. The only thing that matters is the cues, the drills, the fills, the thought processes that you're using with the athlete you're working with. do they work? Now, that doesn't mean that that's not going to change over time. Every drill and cue, for the most part, is going to have an expiration date. The body develops. We start to get pitched differently. They attack us different ways in the games. I've got a different coach I'm playing for that has a different mindset as far as what he wants his hitters to do. There's all these different variables that factor into allowing us to be the best hitter we can possibly be and reach the pinnacle of who we can ultimately be. So, finding those things and those cues and those tools that are going to allow us to reach that pinnacle, it's not going to come from one guy telling every single athlete to do the same thing, and it's a lot of times too, it's, once kids get past the age of 12, 13, 12 and 13 is probably the age, I think, where, parents probably are making the biggest decisions on who their athletes are training with. But once kids start to get older and they can start to think through things and process things on their own, then it's more of us. We talk to athletes about, look, you have a unbelievable amount of information on social media available. And it's, for me, I look at it, as a good and a bad. Growing up, man, I wished I had any kind of instruction. My high school baseball coach was a college basketball player. So, all the information that's available can be a really, really good thing, but there's so much information overload and so many people competing as far as, hey, it's an argument versus a discussion. Like, let's talk about hitting. Let's talk about what certain guys think and what certain guys do, and understanding why those cues and drills and thought processes work for each individual athlete. I tell people, look at it like a buffet line, right? When you go into a buffet, you don't typically take everything off the buffet. You take the stuff that you like, or you take the stuff that keeps you healthy, and you leave the other stuff. If you jump on someone's social media page and you don't like one of the drills they're using or the cues they're saying, like, that doesn't make them a bad hitting guy or hitting girl. It just simply means that that's not a good cue for you. The other way to look at it is it's just like going to a pharmacy. Like, if you go into a pharmacy and they have no labels on all the medications and you're sick and you go in and you pick a random medication and take it, I mean, there's a chance it's going to make you better, but there's also a good chance it's going to make you really, really sick or kill you. So you have to understand, and that's ultimately the biggest thing we try to do at 108 is we try to make sure that athletes understand why they're doing certain things. If you come in and watch the session, obviously you were down and brought your son down to work with us, and we talk a lot. We talk through things. We ask more questions than we tell people to do. Like, especially when you're working with professional players, like, you don't want it to be your idea. You want to find ways to allow them to sift through stuff to where it's actually their idea. And there's a lot of times I'm in the tunnel with a pro ball guy and I'm like, hey, like, I know exactly what I want this guy to do, but if I just tell him to do it, he's not going to trust it. Right. I don't know the guy well enough. I haven't worked with him long enough, but when I can get to a position where I can ask him the right questions that kind of lead him to where we want to get to, that's ultimately when it becomes their idea. And then that's when it starts to stick more.
And it's interesting. If you were to put 10, 12 hitting coaches in a room, I mean, you would need probably a metal detector before they come in, just in case things got rough. But the one thing that they would agree upon, and I've actually done this before in spring training when I get brought in to do kind of what I do. The one thing that every hitting coach would agree upon is what? One thing.
No one moves the same way.
No one moves the same way. And how about if you can't see it, you're not going to hit it?
Oh, fact, 100%.
Right.
100%.
And that's yeah. Go ahead, Nate.
Go ahead.
I think. No,
I was just.
Nate, you there?
My bad. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish up on that. That was. I threw it back to you.
I was just going to say that's one of the things that when you came down and brought Tone down, it was cool to sit there and talk with you about the book that you wrote, as well as what you do on the vision side of things, because that's one of the most neglected sides of the game that no one really trains. It's mind blowing to me that one of the biggest, if you look at professional athletes, specifically obviously in baseball, and I would imagine, I haven't done a whole lot of research in other rotational sports, but hand-eye coordination stuff, like those athletes that are playing at the highest level most certainly have to have good vision. And it blows my mind that there's so little training and information out there as far as things that are going to help on that side of it. If you can't see something, you're certainly not going to be effective squaring up a round ball with a round bat.
Well, I think you're right, Nate. And I think I know that the big league hitting coaches that I've talked to that I sit in the shadows and kind of help them because Major League Baseball, sometimes their ego doesn't allow outside help to an extent. It's a topic that anyone who has taught hitting realizes at some point, if I can take that swing, and we understand about the timing, and timing sometimes is never going to be perfect. That's why barrel adjustability and being on plane gives you multiple chances if you're not perfectly timed. But if they could see it not only sooner and longer and have a better estimation of time to collision, that's really what hitting and vision is all about. You'd have better hitters. And I know the young hitting coaches in this area that ask me, well, Tony, what about, what's your theory on the swing? Are you a rotational guy? Are you a linear guy? And I went through that when I was young, and I realized, you know what? No one wins that battle. And the line that I use all the time is, once the game starts, you take your horseshit swing and be on time.
Yep.
And people, the swing guys don't like me saying that because to an extent it insults what they're teaching, which is not the case at all. The swing that we're developing inside a tunnel many times does not show up as our 108 friends say, when the lights go on, to an extent. And I think teaching hitting, and there's not too many hitting coaches that spend enough time, in my opinion, on what everyone says is the most important part of it. A lot of it gets back to Nate, I don't really know enough about it. You teach what you know. It's like me thinking I'm Nate Headley and I'm going to go and break down a swing to the nth degree and provide the top level instruction that you provide. And so I think it's important, but people back away from it to an extent. And it's getting better. I think more and more hitting coaches and even organizations, especially now with chase rates and commanding the strike zone, and we have all these big cliches in pro ball, right? But from a context standpoint, what are you specifically doing, or what can a young hitter do? Off the tee, in center toss, off of BP, off the high-speed machines to actually improve not so much their vision. I think sometimes when people say vision, it's, their prescription eyesight. It's about seeing the ball. Well, we know at the major league level, they're not seeing the ball hit the bat. But this is the things that we try to talk to parents about. And we do just a little differently up here. Hey, you know what? If we spend a little bit more time earlier with see the ball, hit the ball, it's amazing how the body naturally unfolds, I call it, and you see a better swing at times. But I think one of the problems in the hitting world, and you hit it best, we've got a social media cult hero who's going to be visiting New York next month here. And without even mentioning his name, he asked if hey, I've got a player on the Yankees that's pretty good, and I'm the guy, and can I rent your facility out? And it was amazing, Nate. People calling here. Well, Tony, I didn't know you teach the teacher man stuff. Oops, excuse me. I said the word. I said I don't. I said I've never met the guy, nor do I really care about what he teaches. I said he's coming to our campus. He asked if he can have some space. We're charging him X to do that, and we'll leave it at that. But the amount of calls that we got, Nate, from parents asking, so this is, Tony, in your opinion, this is the guy. This is the guy. His snap and move and all the things that he believes in, right? Is this the best? And you already answered the question. It might work for some guys. But I think the problem becomes when all of the personalities out there, right, start saying this is the absolute, and you're having players blindly follow them all the time. Nate, to your point, that's the tough part. But then as a player, when do you know, and you mentioned before about the buffet. Well, guess what? A 12 or 13-year-old might not know what's best for him. He's going to stay on the dessert a little bit more than the greens and the fish. So at what point does the parent or someone say, this is not for you?
Yeah, so when it comes to Rich, man, like here's the thing with Rich that I've had a chance. He came down and he debated Bleak down here last year during our Bridge the Gap conference, and I've actually had multiple hitters in the past that I've worked with that have also worked with him, and he gets a bad rap in the fact that like when he's on social media, kind of his thing that he almost a social media bully, don't poke the bear. And, that's been, successful for him as far as growing almost a cult following. And listen, man, like there's some things that Rich teaches that honestly are genius. Like the whole mindset of snapping it for certain players is the guys that are really pushy that, that's not a bad thought process for some guys. Matter of fact, I got a kid who's the number one ranked JUCO outfielder in the country. He's going to be at University of Tennessee this year and should be starting for them in the outfield this year. And he's built similar to a guy like the new captain up in New York. And we use some of the thought processes and cues with this young man individual, or this young man specifically, and we've had a ton of success and results out of it, but there's also guys that have gone out there and worked with him that their careers have basically ended because that's not how their body naturally moves. So my big thing, and this isn't specifically on Rich or anybody specifically for that matter, it's just a matter of understanding like you can't teach one way for each individual hitter because there's guys that are built completely different. There's horizontal pass, there's vertical pass, there's pronators, there's supinators, there's back leg flexion guys, front leg flexion guys. There's so many different things that factor in. Hell, even on the vision side of things, there's guys that like to, prefer to look up out of their eyes versus guys that like to look down out of their eyes more. There's just so many things that factor into it. And until you get to know the athlete and how they move, and get to get in their mind a little bit as far as the things that have worked for them in the past and what hasn't worked. Like, it's just impossible for anyone to go out there and frankly it's unrealistic for anybody to think that one specific way of hitting is going to work for any specific hitter. Like I said, there's nobody in professional baseball that swings the exact way. Matter of fact, no hitter takes the exact same swing every single time.
Right.
So it's just ludicrous to think that there's one way to be successful in this sport.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot on behalf of 108, and you guys call him Bleak. I call him Gino because he's an Italian from New York. The one feature or the one piece of what you guys are doing down there that, in your opinion, is really helping the mass of young hitters, and I define young under 40. And without giving away any trade secrets, and certainly the water bags are in New York. We actually call them something different now, Nate. We call them the hot zone, the hydra oscillation training. A much sexier term than water bags.
That's way better.
Okay, when Austin and David were up there, I said, man, we got to do a better job than calling these things water bags. So next day I come in and said, hey, we're going hydra oscillation training. That is hot. But talk to the audience because you see it on social media with yourself and Eugene and the other guys down there. Why do you like the water bag so much for players ages 7 all the way up to some of your pro guys?
For sure. So I think the biggest thing with water, number one, it's safe for all ages. Number two, it builds body awareness. The water doesn't lie. You feel when the rotation occurs. You feel when the transition of the weight goes from one end to the other. When you're throwing them, I talk about it all the time, like a traffic roundabout. When you enter a traffic roundabout, you have 3 different exits, not including the one you come in. You have one that goes off to the right, one that goes off to the center, and the one that goes off to the left, which is just like your swing, oppo, middle, pull. Where your body stops, where your body decels is where the barrel's going to go. And it's the same thing when you're rotating and throwing a water bag, the transition of water from one side to the next and where the body is decelerating, you become more aware. And a lot of times when you take the implement of a bat or a ball out of the hand of an athlete, they stop thinking about trying to swing a bat or stop thinking about trying to throw a ball, and they focus more on the movement itself. Obviously there's instability training that comes with the water, and we do a lot of stuff on trampolines and one legs and creating instability and strength in the core. But ultimately when you can get an athlete to move the right way, that's the biggest thing. So like when we run our classes, we'll go in and our first 30 minutes of our hour and a half long classes is movement prep. We don't ever touch a bat or a ball until the first 30 minutes is over.
Right.
And then that first 30 minutes, all we're trying to do is specifically get the athlete to move the way we want without him thinking about doing it with a bat. Because once we can get them to understand what that move feels like, once we put a bat in their hand or we put a ball in their hand, they're able to recreate that move. And then, it's easier for them to make adjustments, and a lot of times, we'll be in the middle of the session, on the machine with a guy and something, we can't get a move to show up. And then we'll take the bat out of their hand, put the water bag in their hand. And then ultimately like that, it clicks. So, it's safe, it's effective, it creates more body awareness. It's something that athletes can take on the road with them wherever they go. I think it's just a matter of time. I mean, last year you saw Paul Skeens in the bullpen in Omaha, the College World Series, warming up with bags in the bullpen. And I think it's just a matter of time when you're going to start seeing guys on deck with them and pre-gaming with them. And, a number of the organizations that we work with around the country are already doing that for pre-game stuff. So, it's an invaluable tool that's extremely affordable. And I think the one thing that we're doing differently than, the other companies out there that are selling water bags is, we don't just provide you, we tell people all the time, we don't sell water bags, we sell education, we give you the bag.
Right.
Ultimately for us, it's a matter of it's effective, it's safe. It's like I said, I mean, you can take the water out of it and put it in your bag and take it with you wherever you go. And it's opening up, strength and conditioning on top of player development in a really cheap implement. And what we do is we provide you the information on how to use it as well. And, we're providing information to colleges for, using it in the weight room for rotational force development. We're using it for game specific moves as far as, buying time and adjustability. We're using it for dynamic movement training as far as just learning how to rotate properly and better. So there's just so many different ways to use them. And it's opening up, resources for athletes around the country that don't have access to weight rooms or don't have access to, a high level hitting coach or high level throwing coach.
Nate, if you can, and we're running out of time. We got a few more minutes. Talk to the audience. You've got a big event going on or coming up in December, Bridge the Gap. I'm sure you'll be down there as one of the presenters. Who is that for, and why should people either tune in or actually show up in Knoxville, Tennessee on December 15th to the 17th?
Yeah, so we run every year. We run, it's called Bridge the Gap. It's a conference that we put on. We bring, the biggest thing, like, the name of it, Bridge the Gap. We're trying to bridge the information, from the highest level to, colleges and high schools and young athletes from all around the country that are trying to get, quality information from people at the highest level and doing it at the highest level. So, we have people that come in and present, from big league hitting coaches, big league pitching coaches. This year is going to be a pretty cool event. And the fact that we're doing some stuff a little bit differently, we're still going to have some pretty awesome presentations going on, but we're bringing in, 25 of the, top 100 players in the country, and they're going to be in the tunnels with us, and we're going to actually train our athletes in front of everyone who's in attendance. And then obviously you can get access to it virtually as well. So we did it last year for the first time after the presentations. One of the days we did some work with some of our athletes that we had up, and the feedback we had was incredible. So we decided to step it up a level, and we're going to have multiple days of that training going on. So now it's not a matter of people just having to sit down and listen to us talk about how we do it, but they actually get in the tunnel. They get to see how we work with athletes. They get to see the cues that we use with them. It's just invaluable information, and we're able to do it, like I said, virtually as well. So people that can't get here in person, they're actually going to have access to it no matter where they're at.
If someone wanted to sign up, Nate, for the event, website 108 Performance.
Yep.
Easiest way to do that.
Yep.
And I'm assuming that the water bags that you had talked about, they can also be purchased on that website too.
Yep, absolutely. If you go to our website, you can get access to the virtual or in-person tickets. You can get access to all of our training, our water bags, all of our product. And we actually just updated our website. Let me make sure I've got the right one before I screw it up. Yeah, 108performance.com. Best way to find us right now. And then obviously too, if you guys, I'm sorry, 108, the 108way.org.
Okay.
Is our new website. And also if they have any issues getting a hold of us, they can certainly reach out to us on social media as well. I do a pretty good job making sure I stay up with that, and we have guys that are in charge of making sure that we return any of those DMs that we get. So
good.
Love to get the product out there. We love to spread the truth, man.
Well, Nate, I can't thank you enough for spending an afternoon with me, with the audience. Who's on First? Everything baseball players and their parents need to know on Amazon. I'm hoping soon that some of the participating frozen rope locations will actually have it in their pro shops also. I had the opportunity I had the opportunity to meet Nate a few weeks ago. Besides the resemblance of the great one, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's one of the best. He cares. He gets it. The holistic approach that he brings to teaching is really cool. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys, I guess, in the next few weeks down there, Nate. And thank you for your time. And on behalf of our audience across the country, we thank you, and we'll hopefully get you back on, or maybe do a live broadcast at some point in Knoxville, or get you up to Yankee Land where you can come up and you can spread your love up here.
Tony, I truly appreciate you having me. It's a pleasure, man. And we look forward to seeing you down here. And I'd love to make it up that way. I haven't got to get up there since my brother stopped playing for the Yanks. So
we'll make that happen.
Thank you again for having me.
All right, Nate. Awesome. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great, bro.
Okay.
Take care, Tony.
Bye-bye.
See you, buddy.
Nate Headley, you talk about a multi-dimensional teacher, understands swings, understands hitting, understands the mental part of the game. Not many hitting coaches who can say that their brother played for 10 years in the big leagues and has been doing it at the grassroots level for the longest time. His book, I read it twice, actually, and even though my children are out and didn't need the information, if there's one book that a parent needs to, or have the player actually read, Who's on First, is a great reference to be able to do that. Tony Abbattini signing off on Beyond the Ball, and we'll see you next episode at some point.